I may or may not main Shadow the Hedgehog just to see, if I can actually get him to say, "Where's the damn fourth Chaos Emerald?" Finally, Dr. Robotic, and I'm going to go back in time in order to steal the rings for myself so that I can finally stop the Sega Master System from being, delivered to Little Snek's house.
That is an ambition, all right. Yes, today, ladies and gentlemen, listening to the Tomodachi Bros podcast, we are going to talk about a video game icon. You know him, I know him, everyone knows him. Whether they like him or not, that is a completely different story. We're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog.
You're talking about, the best and most notable of all horror, icons. Everybody's favorite. Hey guys, it's me, friendly neighborhood movie Sonic.
Yes, we get to deep dive into the insanity and the, quite frankly, like the thing that's really interesting from one particular viewpoint is how, by all rights, Sonic as a franchise should have been over 20 years ago. But he lives on. He lives on and he fights tooth and nail to maintain relevancy and somehow keeps doing it. Like it's kind of miraculous, really, if you think about it.
I think honestly it's because Sonic tapped into the TISM force, and so long as there are autists, then there are going to be people who like Sonic. And I mean, I distinctly remember a green text from this one young dad who was like, "Be me, have a young son who was just diagnosed with autism, discovered that his favorite game is Sonic Adventure 2. He loves running around, and, I see him just running around in our basement, and I'm like, "What are you doing, son?" He's like, "I'm Sonic, Dad. I gotta go fast." And I'm like, just Anons, be kind to him when he discovers you.
He's not wrong. Yes, let's go back. Let's go back to the distant year of 1991. For reference, I would have been 4 years old, and I believe Noodle would have just been born.
Noodle would have just been born.
June 23rd, 1991.
Oh my, okay. This is going to be some deepest, darkest Noodle trivia.
All right.
Noodle lore. He would have been 6 months old at that point.
All right.
This would have been truly a little Noodle. This was a little Noodle event.
Very little Noodle. Yes.
I would have been there, and I would have been very upset because, well, actually, no, I wouldn't have been upset because when Little Noodle was presented to me and said, "Here, little Ditaku, this is your little brother. Also, here's ice cream." And so he's secretly my favorite brother because I got ice cream. Don't tell my other brother.
All right. No, we'll get to find out very quickly which of your brothers actually watched the podcast. Because
I mean, they both know that, and I both mess with them because of that. But still, I mean, that's has always been like my thing that's stayed with me ever since. That's gonna stay with me until I die. So
nice. So in North America, it was June 23rd, and in the PAL region and Japan, it was July the same year. On the Mega Drive slash Sega Genesis, we got Sonic the Hedgehog 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Sega's answer to the Super Mario Brothers games. Now, mind you, Mario had already made a name for himself. So Sega was like, well, we got to do something, we got to do something that'll captivate the audiences. Now, remember, the lore and the designs were not standardized at this time. For you little kiddies who were born, post 2001, the internet changed the way game companies handled localizations and the way they handled lore for their games and their characters. See, in Japan, Sonic was this more mischievous Mickey Mouse character, but here in the United States, oh man, we got something entirely different because they decided
I
to
mean,
give him radical attitude.
to be fair to early 90s, Sega of America, Yuji Naka specifically, and this is a thing where it's one of those things where now, because of the hubbub about it, they've kind of had to distance themselves from it. But if you look at him, and Yuji Naka has said this, Yuji Naka being the guy who actually created him and then also went on to do some horrible things.
Some felonies, yes.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that Balan Wonderworld was a felony, but
Oh no, he actually got in some legal trouble a couple years ago. But I don't really know the details on that, to be honest.
but anyways, uh, Sonic the Hedgehog was very clearly inspired by Michael Jackson,
Yes.
and it's very much of that era of like the late 80s, early 90s, like kind of the bad era of Michael Jackson. And I mean the album bad, not like the like
Low
bad.
quality. Yeah.
Yes.
Bad as in the album
Ask your
entitled Bad.
Yes, ask your parents about it, Jimmy. It's actually a really good album.
It is.
So,
It is.
And it's kind of that period, and so him being like radical, it's like that. It kind of was how Japanese OG Sonic was. I mean, because that is kind of the way that Michael Jackson was presenting himself at that point.
That is
And
true, but I would say that our version here in the West was definitely more exaggerated in no small part thanks to the animated series. And yes, I will get to those, but I'll get to those in a minute.
I mean, yes, but I also would be remiss to say this. In one of the originals, and I'm kind of disappointed that this didn't actually happen, in a true Phineas and Ferb, Perry the Platypus moment, one of the earliest versions of Sonic that we know of, he had a human girlfriend named Madonna, who was basically just Madonna.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is how like late 80s we are talking, guys.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, having rewatched Saddam pretty recently, like this year, I can say, without a hint of irony, because I have no like nostalgia looking back on Saddam, that it is pretty bad.
Yeah. No.
I'm sorry.
You know
I'm
what,
sorry. I'm probably
that'll be your hot take. I have one of my own.
I'm probably gonna lose you some subs, and I don't want to insult anyone, but I'm like, guys, I'm just looking back on it. It's not very good.
It's Captain Planet with furries, and you know what? Since you did a hot take, I feel obligated to do one of the same. Sonic the Hedgehog, 1991, Sega Genesis slash Mega Drive was not a good game. I'm sorry, it really wasn't. They really didn't know what they were doing. It's clunky. The boss fights are dumb and underwhelming, and it just feels like a rough draft for a much better game that we didn't get. It's like, oh man, look out, guys. Eggman has a singular tiny needle on the bottom of his egg carrier, and he will very slowly poke the ground and take away one tiny block at a time. Oh man, this is definitely an evil mastermind at work.
To play devil's advocate, because apparently that's what I'm doing this podcast. His design philosophy was very different from other character platformers of the era. Having played many of them myself, and let me say also, this was not the golden. Okay, this is my other hot take. The Nintendo Master System era, the Famicom / Master System era, was not the quote unquote golden age of gaming, because let me tell you, all these games were hard as snot, and someone without any depth perception and also not having very good motor control, and also not owning a video game system at my home. So I basically I didn't even have the benefit of being able to practice. It's like these games are just not very good. They're not very intuitive, and they're not.
Not to mention, the game wants you to go 300 miles an hour, and you can only see 10 feet in front of you at any given time.
That's the thing, though. All the other ones are basically it's a completionist, explore the entire stage, collect all the MacGuffins. Meanwhile, Sonic's like, don't care about any of that. We are just gonna go as fast as possible. Three fast, three furious. Boy! Now, did it would succeed in that? I mean,
Kinda.
I honestly never really played Sonic the Hedgehog 1 that much. I actually have way more experience with the adventure titles going on, for better or worse, mostly because that's when I met a certain Snek, and, he's like, oh boy, I like Sonic Adventure. And I'm like, oh boy, I don't really know Sonic, but okay.
Don't worry.
So,
I can teach you. In fact, let's...
oh boy, do you like Chow? Don't answer that. Your answer is clearly yes. And then he proceeded to show me how to game the Chow Garden.
Yes. Yes, I did.
Yes, this is actual Tomo Bros lore. This is a thing that happened.
Yeah, it's like Snek likes V-Life stuff or something like that. How strange. Now, I will tell
And yet
you,
you haven't done Recode yet, or any of the actual Digimon life sim games.
those games aren't fun as Let's Plays. Like, I'm playing through Next Order, but it's like, oh my god, it's such a grindy slog. It would make such bad video content. Like, maybe as a screenshot Let's Play, but that's just, that ain't me. That ain't me.
Not like you've done hundreds of thousands of hours of screenshot Let's Plays
Yeah, but no one
or
knows about
anything.
that, so that's just a thing, all right. Now, I will tell you another interesting thing is there were two completely different video games named Sonic the Hedgehog dropped in 1991, and that is because Sega made a different mistake that year called the Sega Game Gear. And the Sega Game Gear, okay, you know what? I will give Sega, I will give the devil their due. Sega loved high technology and bleeding edge capacity, and they really
But,
wanted to see what they could do to push this technology to its utmost limits.
but don't you know, the Game Gear was the smart, hard working one, because the Mega Drive's too busy slacking off and drinking cola and taking a nap and eating pudding. Meanwhile, the Game Gear had to save the world because the R4 chip was always trying to destroy the world.
Yes, the chip that was made for the DS is definitely the concern of a console that died out 15 years prior.
The Game Gear had to team up with the Game Boy and had to fight against R4.
Yeah, Miss Polite and boring.
Meanwhile, Jimmy's like, I have no idea what's going on with idiots.
You guys should go back and rewatch season 1 if you're not sure what we're talking about. Anyway, I'll tell you a fun fact. My sister Snek actually had a Game Gear, and she actually had the Game Gear version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So the first Sonic game I had ready access to was this really bad game that, as I understand it, they were made originally as Master System titles because inexplicably the Master System was super popular in, I want to say it was Brazil. And
Yep.
of all things that are also really popular in Brazil, this includes Sonic the Hedgehog. So, kind of a peanut butter and jelly situation here. They're like, hey, they love
Well,
our
you know,
8-bit system there. So let's make
yeah,
games for them.
yeah. You want to know what's even crazier, there, Professor?
What's that?
The Master System was such a huge hit in Brazil that they're still making games for it.
Somehow that doesn't surprise me.
And I mean, knowing what we know about, Latin America's love of Dragon Ball and how like just festooned with Dragon Ball references, Sonic is. I mean, does this really surprise you?
When you put it like that, you know what? That actually brings up an interesting point. Is I haven't actually really talked about the characters or the story thus far, which there isn't really much of one. So let me break it down for you real fast. Like in the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, by the way, the Game Gear games aren't canon, so I'm not going to worry about them. So in the first Sonic the
But
Hedgehog,
they introduced Fang the sniper, and he's such an important character. And I swear,
yes,
if they add him in Sonic Rumbles, I am going to laugh so hysterically.
I mean, on the one hand, it'd be a missed opportunity. On the other hand, meme opportunity. But we'll see. In the first game, there was this fat, rotund scientist. And, in Japan, he was known as Dr. Eggman. And here in the West, he was named Dr. Robotnik. Now,
Now,
here's.
this is a very important thing because this is like a triple layered just pun meme
Yep.
because his name actually is derived from the lyrics of a Beatles song, "I Am the Walrus." And if you look at him, he looks like a cross between there's a certain very distinctive picture of Teddy Roosevelt, who he's got his big Coke bottle glasses on, and he has just got this huge grin on his face.
Yep.
And you look at the classic old, like early Genesis Robotnik, and that's what it is. It's literally just, a 60s Teddy Roosevelt just, grinning, just being like, I can't wait to, terrorize some small woodland creatures. And that's what Eggman is.
Exactly. And we'll get into the name thing later because there's been some fan consternation about that over the years. But we'll address that when the games do.
Yes. But I have to say, though, I mean, Yuji Naka very clearly is a fan of rock and roll
Yes.
because, like, just Sonic the Hedgehog is just full of things like that. And I think it's, as much as I like Robotnik as a name, it's a very, very just chef's kiss name. But you're missing the pun reference, though.
Yep. That is
And
true.
it's lesser because of that. That's all I wanted to say. I'm sorry.
No, that's fair. That's fair. See, Sonic was supposed to be this very simple story because you see, Eggman slash Robotnik would take random woodland animals and stuff them into robots. Now, here's the thing: they're power sources for the robot. They're basically stuffed into the robot and they run on a little treadmill, and that's how the badniks are powered. They are not transformed into metal or anything stupid like that. That wasn't what was happening. That's why Sonic could smash the robot and the little animal would pop out and go about its merry way.
That's why in Sonic Adventure, when you actually smash some of the egg machines, that's how you get animals
Yep,
for your child garden.
exactly right. And Eggman just wanted to take over the world. Why? Well, here in the West, we didn't really get a reason, but as I recall in some of the early Japanese promotional material, Eggman wanted to take over the world so he could build a massive theme park dedicated to himself known as Eggman Land. He just really likes theme parks. That's it.
I mean, considering the number of times in Sonic games that there is just Eggman Land, I'm not, you know, I'm not saying that this isn't a thing that he would do, but I'm just saying it's very in line with his character that he would do that.
Oh yes, definitely. And so the whole thing is the game, if you knew nothing about Sonic, if there was no internet, which back then there was not, essentially, you would play through this game, and every now and then, if the conditions were right, you beat the boss, got to the end with 50 rings or more. At the end of a stage, a big golden ring would appear, and you could jump into it, and this would take you to the special stages, which were really vomit-inducing and terribly designed. Like, universally, Sonic special stages are some of the worst special stages in video game design history. They are genuinely awful. Your nostalgia goggles do not prevent this from being a true statement. Anyway,
And yet the irony is in the Sonic Mania game, I always remember you going, oh, wow, they actually nailed the pseudo mode 7 effect on this.
no, they did. They're still awful, though. Like, I'm impressed that they went for the retro iconic, and I applaud them for it. They're still bad. Anyway, in the special stages, you had the chance of obtaining a Chaos Emerald, and the game would tell you that these things were called Chaos Emeralds. And in the first game, there were 6 of them. What did they do? Basically nothing. If you beat the game and did not have all 6 Chaos Emeralds, then you would just get oh, you won, but Eggman has the Chaos Emeralds. And you're like, I'm 5, and what is this?
But don't you see, Eggman, the last Chaos Emerald is in my mouth. You're going to have to reach in there and get it.
Google Lumpy Touch if you're still wondering what we're talking about. Anyway, for some reason,
Or
him having these
if you're squeamish, don't. It's
it's a
actually kind of harrowing.
yeah. Don't if you don't stomach horror or body horror content particularly well, maybe don't. So why was Eggman having the 6 Chaos Emeralds a big deal? Well, we didn't really have a means of knowing at the time, so there was a lot of guesswork involved. But if you got all 6 emeralds and beat the game, you would be treated to the best ending, which involved Sonic just kind of having a party with his little animal friends. And yeah, that was basically the game. That was the game that launched a legend.
Clearly what it was if you didn't have it, then Eggman was going to take it. He was going to feed it to the puddle that he found at the Echidna Temple.
Yeah, obviously. So
Here, this is a thing I do with all the precious minerals I find. I just drop them into living puddles.
obviously,
What? You don't do that?
yeah, you're the weirdo here. So a year later, we get Sonic the Hedgehog 2, not Sonic Adventure 2. That would be jumping chronologically a bit. So
Oh, my.
Sonic 2 introduces a lot of things. First off, there were a lot of new game mechanics introduced. There was a lot of refining in how the game's engine would function. The level design was still trash, but overall, the game's mechanics were sharply refined, including the
This
addition.
was also where Tails finally was getting trolled.
Yes, indeed. Miles Morales was added, and he got to be Sonic's best friend, and there was now kind of a kind of 2-player co-op mode. It's kind of, sort of, a little.
You are bound and determined to get Sony bankrupt because, Sega's going to be like, excuse me, Miles Morales.
Yes. Miles Morales, also known as Tails.
Miles Prower Morales.
Prowler Morales. Yes.
I'm gonna have to remember that.
So Tails shows up, and he is Sonic's best friend, and he is named Tails because he has 2 tails. And yeah, and also it turns out there's not 6 Chaos Emeralds, there's actually 7 of them. More on this later. And if you get all 7 Chaos Emeralds, Sonic can turn Super Saiyan.
I have to ask, Professor, because I've heard that the gray one, is actually artificial. Is this true, or is this just
That appears to be either fandom theory or that is something from one of the non-canon comics. Because, dumb children, there is a thing known as the Sega Sonic canon. And that is what Sega, as far as the games are concerned, consider to be canon and not canon. If it is in the games, it is canon, broadly speaking. There are certain games that are either just never brought up again or ignored, like, Knack the Fang, Fang the Knack. Yeah,
Are you
certain,
talking about Fang the Sniper
yes,
and Best Bros, Bean and
Bean and Bark,
Bean and
yes.
Bark? Yes.
Yeah,
Once again, if they show up in Sonic Rumble, I am going to laugh mightily.
fair. That's fair. So Sega Sonic canon is really been treated very, very fast and loose from basically the beginning up until the launch of like Sonic Frontiers. A lot of the lore notes and docs and stuff that you can get in Frontiers is supposed to help codify and clarify what didn't happen, which is why Frontiers was also really reference happy with regard to like talking about things like the events on the arc, which we'll get to in a minute. So they could basically do whatever, and it didn't really matter. And so around this time, it was around Sonic
That
2
would
and Sonic
explain why the
3
Sonic story book series got so...
weird.
It took a turn, yeah, let's just say.
Yeah, so around this time, around Sonic 2 to Sonic 3, there was a big push for video game adaptations, especially here in the West. This was around the time we got things like the Super Mario Brothers Super Show and the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon, Captain N, one of the worst shows to ever exist. And yes, we got not one, but two Sonic the Hedgehog cartoons.
I still am I'm just in awe of the fact that even, you're like, yes, I remember Ruby Spears, Mega Man. That's the one with the lion mummies that turned, these Hawaiian people into like mind controlled lion mummies. And I'm like, okay, Snek, you've said some weird boneheaded things, but that is beyond weird and boneheaded. There's clearly no way that this science fiction series is going to have Hawaiian lion men mummies that mind control people. But I gotta say, I was wrong. I was so very wrong.
That the 90s were an interesting time to be alive. Maybe not a good
Yes,
time, but an interesting time.
but I mean, at the same time, though, I had very vivid memories of Dr. Light getting, it's like, congratulations, Dr. Light, you saved the world. Here, have a laboratory. And the laboratory got up on
And walked
legs and
away.
then started walking into the ocean. And I'm like, this is, I once again have misremembered things a great deal. There's clearly no way. No, no, I was remembering it entirely correctly.
Yes, you were. And
Ruby Spears Mega Man was a trip.
it certainly is. And funny enough, this episode will probably come out before season 2. Anyway, so the thing that happened is we got Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog was basically what if we basically just did some Looney Tunes sketches, but with Sonic in the role of Bugs Bunny. And so he'd do goofy things like dress up in drag, and Dr. Robotnik would get all hot and bothered for him. And it's obviously just Sonic in drag. And then he would do silly things like he'd pull on Robotnik's mustache and it would stretch out really, really far and like snap back like a rubber band, and silly, goofy antics like that.
You know, I also have to say, because I have been on 4chan entirely too often, too much, and you kind of learn these things from being on 4chan. I have distinctly been, I have the information in my head that the character designer for the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog specifically designed their version of Eggman such that they wanted to make a really sexy fat dude.
Yes.
And
That
now
is
you
why
have to know.
that is why the show pays great attention to Robotnik's physique and his butt in particular as
That now you have to know this, or you are cursed with this knowledge, as I am.
yes. And that is where the snooping as usual meme comes from as well. And I
Oh,
guess,
there's so many. I mean, pretty much, all of the I Teach Vader memes, and there are many of them. All come from that. So,
yes. And I will say, Adventures is kind of a fun, dumb show. And like that's the thing, it is dumb. You know it's dumb, but it's entertaining. I find it very engaging and funny enough. Of the earliest non-game material about Sonic, it was one of the first to talk about the Chaos Emeralds. I mean, it was wrong. It was all just completely made up, but they did talk about them. In Adventures, there were 4 Chaos Emeralds, and each one corresponded to a superpower. I believe it was like the Emerald of Invincibility, the Emerald of um they all had different superpowers, and having them granted you whatever power that emerald gave. And they came from the Zone of Confusion, which was apparently their name for the special stages. And honestly, I kind of understand how they would have come to that name, because they really are very confusing to look at. There was no supersonic mind, but there were 4 Chaos Emeralds for a short story arc, which was about the only continuity the series ever had. And there's also a bit where Robotnik builds a robot hedgehog waifu, and Sonic falls in love with her. And because he like writes her romantic poetry, she overrides her AI routine and becomes a good guy. And this show was so weird. Weird and a little uncomfortable at times, but you know what? It's still entertaining. I have to give it that. Now, the one you
oh
guys,
please, like, we're not gonna get, in the Snek's Monster Girl romance anthology, I'm a luck nerd without any, luck with girls. I'm gonna write cheesy pickup lines to the AI. Oh baby, I am so turned on. Oh no, now I got a yonder AI that's in love with me.
I mean, fair. Now, the series you guys want me to talk about is just Sonic the Hedgehog, or Sonic Sat Am. And I'm going to say the only reason you like that show is because Sally Acorn was voiced by a woman who used her regular speaking voice, who also had a very hot voice. Also, maybe
Oh,
you were me and were actually into the bunny girl who had a southern accent, because those are hot. Either
oh,
way,
yeah. I was thinking it was because of the Archie comics that were desperately trying to be like, hey guys, we really want to be the successor to this.
yeah, yeah, okay. So here's the thing. It's Captain Planet with furries. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It really wasn't very good. It was trying so hard to cram that just 90s edge, totally radical, bro. And like, oh my god, you guys make fun of like the 87 Turtles for being cringe. Like, have you rewatched this show recently? Because, oh my god, like, don't get me wrong. Jaleel White is a talented actor. He's not to blame here. The writing staff is to blame here.
I was about to say, having rewatched 87 Turtles, like it's shocking how much of a jobber the Shredder is. Like he's
Yeah.
always built up as like he's this very hugely threatening guy. In the movies, he's always scary. In all of the media, he's always threat. In the cartoon, he's like, oh no,
Just a
Fry, please,
whiny, like that's
I
the
just want to go back to my wife. Can I just can you're like, no, Sweater, you need to build my block.
you know the funny thing that you say that is like it's almost the reverse, because they tried to make Robotnik threatening in this series, and so they had Jim Cummings voice him. And don't get me wrong, Jim Cummings is a fantastic voice actor. He does
Oh,
villains like a boss.
definitely.
And there's
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
I am deep and gravelly and growly and scheming, and I'm just like, it's not Robotnik as he is in the games, and even Little Snek was like they're like completely different. This has got to be an alternate universe,
You
and
know, it's funny that you say that, where in Sonic CD you actually have, in the Japanese version, you actually have like what Eggman sounds like, and he sounds like this squeaky old man
yeah,
because he is a squeaky old man.
he's supposed to
You
be a
know,
squeaky old dude in his 50s or something, and it's like the thing is, I remember like there's so much love for this show, and I think it comes from pure nostalgia blindness. It's not that good. You're either liking it because there's furry waifus, which fine, go off, shine on your crazy diamond. But as a Sonic series, it's not a Sonic series, and it's not good. And
like it for the furry waifus. I mean, understandable. I
understandable. Have
can't
a nice
really
day.
cast aspersions there. Sneck says,
That would
sweating.
be that would be an interesting glass house to be casting stones from. But yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Stop lauding it as something that it's not. In fact, while we're on the topic of animated series, let's go ahead and touch on the other 90s animated series, which was Sonic Underground. And I don't know what it is about the French and video game adaptations and also adding really bad musical numbers to them. But I'm glad that whoever was responsible for that finally got some help and they stopped. Because oh my god, Sonic Underground is bad. Like the thing is, I got the impression that they didn't know if they wanted to redo Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog or if they wanted to redo Sonic Sat-Am. And they kind of tried to do both. So they got Jim
And
Cummings to come back, but they're like, "Oh no, don't play it that serious. Like play him like half serious, half jokey joke." But then they have these new henchmen, Sleet and Dingo, who are just Scratch and Grounder from Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog again. Oh, and let's not forget the most egregious fan fiction, where they add two new additional characters to give Sonic a brother and a sister. And they play in a band, playing really bad songs and life affirming pop ballads.
is this the one where they have the like truly awful, like Picasso as like we have no idea what depth of field is animation, where it looks like
Yes.
Sonic is like reaching for his feet when he's trying to like dive to save, Knuckles as he's like falling off a cliff.
Yes, that is the one you are thinking of.
Oh,
And
oh Lord.
there were people in the late 90s, early aughts internet interwebs fandom space that were trying to like, no guys, it has Knuckles and it has a Thayer the Echidna from the Archie comic, so this is definitely good. And I'm like, no, no, it's not. But I'll tell you a funny story. I actually watched the series pretty much front to end because in the mornings before I went to school, it was on the same lineup of stuff as the Monster Rancher anime.
And here we know, ladies and gentlemen, that Hipster Snek truly was a hipster from the beginning because no one watched Monster Rancher except for maybe him.
Yeah, there's probably some people who will disagree, but like, I watched these
Oh,
shows.
I'm pretty sure even those people would be like, yeah, Hipster Snek is pretty much a hipster.
I fair. All right, I accept that. Now, that being said, it was bad. It was bad to the point where it wrapped around and became actually quite entertaining. Like, and the fact that Sonic Underground became a huge part of YouTube poop culture is kind of glorious. But no, it's bad. It ended inconclusively because they just canceled it before the series was ever finished. The whole thing was like They were royalty. They were triplets born to the Queen Alina, some purple hedgehog woman thing who didn't really do anything in the entire series, but she was supposed to be like shadowing her children the whole time as they went around traveling in a rock and roll band, talking about how great music is, not really having any particular virtues to espouse. Oh man, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And we'll get more into that later. But because it's funny you mentioned Sonic the Hedgehog CD, because that's the next game in line in 1993. And
Well, that one I know specifically for the first off the fact the music is fallen.
yeah,
It is really good.
yes.
And also the fact that apparently Sega forgot to like you know to poke their legal team and be like, hey, yeah, we need you to get the trademarks for these games for the game soundtrack, and they're like, who to the what now?
The what now? So yeah,
Who to the what now?
in some cases, like there was a lot of stuff in the late '90s, early aughts where Sega would they'd own the rights to the music, but not to the vocal tracks. And like how you even manage to negotiate that kind of contract is completely beyond me. We'll have to ask Cog or a Ranger for more info on that. But the funniest bit of trivia about Sonic the Hedgehog CD? Do you know the last port it's received? Do you know what it
Hmm,
was for? In
what?
2013, it was ported to the Ouya.
Oh, jeez.
That's funny. That is hysterical. Sonic CD is a side story. It actually happens between the events of Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So Sonic hadn't met Tails yet, but he does meet a female hedgehog known as Amy Rose. Amy Rose was
This
a
is also where Metal Planet comes from, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, you do. You do recall correctly. Uh, Amy is a fortune teller who falls in love with Sonic when they first meet, and Metal Sonic kidnaps her and carries her off to the elusive Little Planet. The Little Planet orbits around the galaxy and occasionally enters Earth's orbit because Sonic takes place on Earth, not Mobius, whatever that was all about. And the Little Planet enters the atmosphere, and its mere presence seems to distort space and time. So Eggman's like, hey, I can use this to my advantage. So he builds a huge chain and literally chains the Little Planet to a mountain on Earth that he also took the time to carve his face into. Because this is Dr. Eggman, and doing things by halves is not how he do.
Dr. Eggman, because if I can't build a theme park on it, I'm not interested.
And what good is it anyway? So Sonic goes to the Little Planet, and you have two ways of getting the best ending in the game. And that is because there is a time travel gimmick where you have to hit a signpost that reads either past or future, and then run really, really fast, and you will run through time. Basically, you hit 88 miles an hour and you see some serious stuff. So the two ways you can get the best endings is if you go to the past in each zone and destroy the robot factory machine that Eggman installed somewhere on the stage. Or you could visit the special stages and destroy Eggman's UFO carriers and get the Time Stones. The Time Stones are another set of superpowered gems, of which there are 7, but they don't turn you into Supersonic. They just apparently help control time travel, but only on the Little Planet. It's a little unclear what's happening here story wise. But Sonic saves Amy, defeats Metal Sonic, and defeats Eggman. And that's all you really need to know. Because next we're getting into two very important games that originally were supposed to be just one game, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. So, you guys ready for some memes? We got some memes up in here.
Like the fact that in his own theme song, Knuckles says he doesn't chuckle when literally the first thing he does in Sonic and Knuckles is laugh at Sonic.
Is laugh, yes. So, in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, getting the 7 Chaos Emeralds let you turn into Super Sonic. This does not work for Tails, for reasons, drug. And that ending is considered canon as he begins Sonic the Hedgehog 3 as Supersonic, though Knuckles does something that somehow hurts Supersonic, which isn't supposed to be possible, question mark. And Knuckles steals the emeralds per Eggman's instruction, because Eggman had convinced Knuckles that Sonic was the bad guy, and that Eggman was the good, virtuous doctor who was just trying to build a theme park. I mean, he wasn't hurting anyone in the process. It wasn't a big
I
deal, really.
mean, 50% of that isn't a lie. We just, you know,
So throughout the events of the game, Sonic and Knuckles keep fighting with one another up until Knuckles realizes that Sonic was actually the good guy the whole time and Eggman was the bad guy. But Eggman's like, oh, well, it's great that you guys figured that out, but while you were doing that, I built a giant space fortress known as the Death Egg. And with the Death Egg, I can literally just destroy you all and just take what I want. And what he wants is the Master Emerald, a massive emerald enshrined in the floating island shrine once owned by the Echidna race. We'll get more into this in a minute because we're still in the very story light portion of the series.
just going to say it's a darn shame because honestly, a lot of the misinformation about this game is largely because basically fans of this period were just filling in the gaps. And I mean, I hate to say it, but like the Sonic fandom of this period is like way too up their own Otokuses when a lot of like the jokey jokes of the Japanese version, specifically like the entire like oh no, it's the scary thing, and it literally just the Majin screen where it's just the really jokey fan art of Sonic with the
Oh,
boss theme playing.
yeah, just making a weird face. Yeah, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like a demon. It's like, are you guys just that easy to scare? Is that what this is? This is that the takeaway here?
Well, to be perfectly honest, like 90% of it, I'd argue, comes from the fact that they messed with what was supposed to be this upbeat, dance. It's basically 90s dance music,
Yeah.
and they replaced it with this like really unnerving ambient track, which is unfortunate because honestly, the Japanese Sonic CD boss theme is it's so good.
It is. It is. Now, it's important before we continue that I actually did miss a game. For some reason, the Wikipedia listing of all the Sonic games does not include the arcade game, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, because there was actually
Oh,
a
you're
copyright
thinking we were
dispute.
going to talk about Sonic the Fighters.
No, I'll get to that in a minute. Now, the thing is, this one's a little more interesting, but for dumber reasons, because there was actually a bit of a copyright dispute around this time. Because there was an arcade machine known as Sonic Blast Man. And the idea was you were supposed to punch a metal pole as hard as you possibly could. This was a real thing. They did not cushion this pole well. People would literally break their hands trying to play Sonic Blast Man. So they went to court over this. But they also went to court because the people behind Sonic Blast Man tried to argue that Sonic the Hedgehog was infringing on their copyright. This was quite a to do, and around the time Sega was trying to make an arcade game for Sonic the Hedgehog, they were like, forget it, we're not even going to try to fight this. We'll literally just call it Sega Sonic the Hedgehog so there's no confusion. And they released this game in the arcade cabinet where you could have the 3-player co op, and the only mechanics you had were rolling a ball like an old school mouse and a jump button. That's all there was to the game. And that introduced two new friends for Sonic, Ray the Flying Squirrel and Mighty the Armadillo. Now, the reason that was important was because the next game in line was actually Knuckles Chaotix, which introduced a lot of new friends. And the game, it seems like they wanted to add Sonic, but then didn't want Sonic to take over Knuckles' spin-off game. So Sonic was replaced with Mighty the Armadillo. And in the meantime, they introduced Vector the Crocodile, Espio the Chameleon, and Charmy Bee. And none of these
Yeah, this is where the
characters.
Chaotix So for all of you, people who are like, oh boy, I can't wait to find a computer room. Well, now you know where your love of finding computer rooms comes from.
Indeed, from 1995 on the 32X, no less. Now,
Sylvia.
sometime
I
around.
mean, I swear she was the only one who had a 32X.
I mean, yeah, that is true. That's a common America joke, everyone. Anyway, around this time, there was also Sonic the Fighters. I don't have an exact release year because, again, it's not listed. But Sonic the Fighters was also really weird and is generally considered non-canon. That's where you have Bark the polar bear, Bean the dynamite, who is a duck, a robot named Bomb, and 8 Chaos Emeralds.
And also Fang the Sniper.
Yep, Fang the Sniper showed up as a character in a melee-oriented fighting game who had a gun.
Hugh there, the professor, little professor who is, playing Sonic Adventure 2 with Little Ditaku, and then goes, hey, you like fighting games, right? Because we had been playing Soul Calibur, specifically Soul Calibur 3.
2 and 3, yes.
Yes, and so we're like, okay, let's play this. At which point, he busts out Fang the Sniper and proceeds to stun lock me at range with a gun. And I'm like, okay, this is like 7 layers of bullshit.
Yeah. That history doesn't repeat, but it does often rhyme. Guilty Gear Strive joke goes here. There were a few games released in this time, most of which are Game Gear games. You have games like Tails Adventure, Sonic Blast, Sonic the Hedgehog Pocket Adventure, which was for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. That sure is very interesting. Anyway, around this time, a couple other Sega was having a hard time due to their hardware market being a little shaky. The 32X was not great. The Sega CD did not, get the return on delivery that they hoped. And then they did the Sega Saturn, which didn't actually get a flagship Sonic title at all. So yeah, that wasn't great. They got Nights in the Dreams, and don't get me wrong, Nights in the Dreams has its place in history, but it was not Sonic the Hedgehog. In fact, around this time, several other games got ported to PC. That included a collection of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic CD, and Sonic R. And Sonic R is a really weird, clunky racing game that's kind of charming, but doesn't have a whole lot of content to its name. The soundtrack is a banger. I will say, I will be the Sonic R apologist if that's what it takes, but the soundtrack was actually unironically good. But that
I'll say this. I think one of the best parts of Team Sonic Racing was the fact that they added in everybody's Supersonic Racing.
Yes.
That was brilliance.
Yes. And apparently, I remember hearing something about like the game dev was like, oh, well, maybe we should have it a toggle where you can choose if it's the instrumental or the vocal version. And during development, he listened to it so often. He's like, this soundtrack is really good. I'm going to turn the vocals on by default. and that's why it is the way it is. And there's also Sonic 3D Blast, which was also really bad. And again, Sega really wanted to push technology really, really hard. So it tried to make this isometric 3D Sonic game that was just really clunky and awkward to play. And even though you could go through goofy special stages to get Chaos Emeralds, there was also no Super Sonic.
There was the problem partially is also because really, and this really isn't this isn't really the fault of, Sega or really anyone at this point, but it's just kind of the nature of gaming at this juncture that there just really wasn't like a like agreed upon way of navigating 3-dimensional space.
Yeah.
Which is why you see just a utter prevalence of tank controls at this point, because everyone really wanted to have 3D games, but no one really could figure out how to do 3D good.
Yeah, that was definitely an issue for sure. And let's see, is there anything else in the 90s? Oh yeah, in the 90s there was Sonic Schoolhouse. Really awful PC edutainment game. They gave Sonic this really weird, high-pitched voice. It was super weird.
Have you gotten Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine yet?
Oh,
Have we?
I completely forgot about Mean Bean Machine, but yes, in the 90s there was a Puyo Puyo port, which Sega also owns, where they reskinned it in the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. Uh, that was 93. Yeah, I completely missed it. Uh, yeah, it was Puyo Puyo, but themed for Dr. Robotnik. And funny enough, around the same time was Sonic Spinball, a kind of pinball game that was like originally, I believe, going to be tied into Sonic Sat-Am. And then I think the only thing that ever referenced it was a couple of the weird animal critters you could save in the bonus stages look kind of like some characters from Sonic Sat-Am. So the animated series did retroactively impact the games, but I believe both of those games are non-canon.
Oh darn!
I know it's a huge, huge loss, much like Sonic Labyrinth and also other amazing games. Now,
Sonic Labyrinth, which is the best one, much like how Monster Rancher Labyrinth was a good game.
yeah, let's go
I'm,
with
I'm
that.
just spitting hot takes today.
But then a thing happened in 1999. A thing happened known as the Sega Dreamcast, and the Sega Dreamcast was kind of a beautiful machine. In fact, a lot of ways, I think it's really undervalued for what it was. At the same time, it was too little too late, but it also brought with it the first Sonic game that dared to have a larger story, that being Sonic Adventure. Sonic Adventure didn't really move the story forward, but it did confirm quite a few things. Not the least of which being that both Eggman and Robotnik as names were both canon. That Robotnik was a given family name, and that Eggman was originally a mocking name that Sonic gave to him that Eggman kind of decided to reclaim after a fashion. And we also learned more about the
I
ancient
gotta reclaim
echidnas.
Eggman, says, Robotnik.
gotta
You know,
gotta take it back. Not gonna let the furry talk down to me like that.
he says while crying like the switch.
Exactly. And we learned more about the ancient echidnas. They were a warlike race who constantly tried to conquer and expand their boundaries, and ultimately led them to conflict with a being known as Chaos, a sentient water creature who appears to be some kind of mutated version of the Chow. It's a little unclear exactly where he comes from, but if you train a Chow to perfect parameters, you can get what's called the Light Chaos Chow, or an immortal Chow that looks like a small version of Chaos Zero. When Chaos absorbs the Chaos Emeralds, he transforms into Perfect Chaos, a giant water dragon. And yeah, literally just destroys a city. And then Sonic's like, well, time to be hitting the old dusty trail.
Also has one of the funniest things because part of this is told through you basically have to go through a number of different narratives. And so one of my favorites was you're playing as Big the Cat. And so you have this, just the backdrop of this civilization just being destroyed by this primeval ocean monster. Like literally the ocean decided to get up and choose violence. And there's this teenage girl going, "Father, why?" And he's like, "I had to do it to save our empire." And then there's just this wall-eyed cat just looking at it. It's like, well, this is happening today. And it's like, this is how we're telling our narrative. Okay.
This is happening right now, and I am in the middle of it, and I just want to find my friend and go home and go fishing.
Froggy.
So, the next game in line is often forgotten. It was an answer to Mario Party, known as Sonic Shuffle. And Sonic Shuffle, how do I put this? Sonic Shuffle was a mixed bag. Because on the one hand, it had a lot of fun mini games. It had some interesting concepts, and it tried to tie a story into this party game. And the whole thing is Sonic and Company are they're all asleep one night and they share this weird lucid dream and they're all there together. And this random fairy appears to them and she's just like, hey, you have to help me. This magic rock called the Precious Stone is in danger of being corrupted by this entity known as Void, who wants to drag all dreams into darkness. And Sonic's like, okay, I have nothing better to do, I will help you. So then the thing, if you're like, well, that doesn't sound bad at all, I'm like, well, here's the thing. Instead of rolling dice, what happened is there was a deck of cards, and every player would be dealt cards into their hand, and the cards would have numbers from 1 to, I believe, 9, and you would use them to move around the board, and you could use them in little like mini battle things where a monster would have a certain card and you had to use a card above it and the card would go into a roulette, and you're like, okay, well, that still doesn't sound bad. All right, here's the thing. You could take cards from other people's hands and the AI always knew what cards you had at any given time.
Oh no.
Yes, the game cheated, and it cheated relentlessly. Now, the thing is, the AI was actually kind of bad in most of the mini games. If you were in any kind of competition, regardless as to whether it was a one free for all or a 2v2 or a 3v1, you were generally gonna win. And if you were even remotely good at timing your A button presses, then you would win any of the quote unquote combat situations as well. Now,
Hmm.
the game stealing your cards, on the other hand, that was some unforgivable sin right there. But I will tell you an amusing strategy I discovered is if you were at least somewhat cognizant of where the AI was trying to get and knew that you were the only one with the card they would need, you had the option of shuffling the cards in your hand at any given time with a single button press. So as they move to your section of the menu to take one of your cards, you could shuffle at the last second and they'd pull the wrong card very consistently. So the AI's tendency to cheat could be used to routinely defeat them the entire way through the game. If you got good at this, the game was ridiculously easy. And yeah, it was not well liked. Let's just say. It was not well liked, and it was, of the three Sonic Dreamcast games, it was the only one not to be ported to future consoles and PC releases.
That
Um,
right.
now, did it deserve that? I don't know. It's debatable. On the one hand, I think it had its merit. I think it had its charm. But I get fans not receiving it particularly well. I get it. Anyway, next up was Sonic Adventure 2. And Sonic Adventure 2 was really the Sonic team going, okay, guys, we want a story. And we want the story to be bigger, more epic, and more compelling than anything we've done up to this point. If you boil it down to its most basic elements, with the exception of some background information, Sonic Adventure 1 was still very much a Sonic beats up, Eggman robots and then beats up Eggman kind of story. They wanted to change things up. The biggest selling point in Sonic Adventure 2 was not only the addition of some new characters, this being Shadow the Hedgehog and Rouge the Bat, but that you could play from Eggman's perspective. So the whole thing was you had, the hero team, which was Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and Team Dark, which was Eggman, Shadow, and Rouge. And you started getting into intrigue and plot points that wouldn't be fully explained until you did both parts of the story. So it turns out, like, Rouge is working for Eggman. Well, it turns out she's a double agent working for the human government, and she's actually a Fed trying to figure out what happened to the Project Shadow. There was Gerald Robotnik, the grandfather of our current Eggman. And Eggman had a cousin, Maria Robotnik, who was just shot by some Fed because it's what feds do when they break into your private property, even if your private property is a heavily armed space station of death.
Well, to be fair, they tried to shoot, her dog, but unfortunately her dog is, the ultimate life form.
Yes, the dog turned out to be able to teleport. So,
And I mean, I for one am going to laugh hysterically, when we have the bit where, Keanu Reeves is voicing a cartoon animal and, the entire theater got up and clapped
when the Fetty
the
shot the
ATF
10-year-old
shot.
girl in the back.
Yes.
Yes.
Remember, Shadow, furries aren't people.
Whoa, that's surprisingly based.
Yeah, Maria wasn't all that she was cracked up to be. Stat Cube's simuldub is it's a piece of beauty. That's what it is.
It absolutely is. Now, so to try to explain Sonic Adventure 2's story is kind of hard because it's not even a self-contained story. It would have ramifications for everything going forward. So Sonic now has a meaningful rival who was not Knuckles. And Shadow would Shadow would be mischaracterized both by fandom and by Sonic Team going forward. Rouge became a counterpart to Knuckles, and Tails got to walk around in a mech and just blow stuff up, so that was cool. It turns out that Gerald Robotnik, 50 years ago, which if you want, hey Ditaku, do you want to feel old today? Do you need to feel much older now?
It's about to be my birthday, so sure, lay it on me.
So when Sonic Adventure 2 first dropped, 50 years ago would have been in the early 60s. When the movie drops at the end of this year, it will be almost the 80s.
Oh God, yes. You're absolutely right.
So, Gerald Robotnik had his granddaughter, Maria Robotnik, who would have been our Eggman's first cousin. So, the whole thing that happened is she had some kind of condition or disease, and she needed to be in low gravity for it to remain in remission. So, Gerald somehow gets the funding for the ARC project. And Space Colony ARC is the most advanced craft of its day. Gerald tried to find the solution to basically all of life's problems. He speculated that if he created the ultimate life form, the perfect incarnation of life, that he could basically solve mortality and all that things that afflicted it.
I mean, considering how powerful Shadow the Hedgehog is, I mean, he came pretty darn close, to be fair.
Certainly. So his first was a prototype, which is a big old turtle dinosaur thing known as the Bio Lizard, which wasn't really a rousing success given that it needs a life support system on its back at all times. And Gerald locked it in a basement.
Yes, but I gotta say though, I just gotta say, you gotta wonder at what point, Gerald was like, yes, so I have a giant space lizard. But what if giant space lizard was time-traveling, immortal hedgehog? Oh, and by the way, we're also going to give him jetpack or jet boots.
Jet boots, yep. Now, all right, here's where a little bit of fan speculation overlaps with Sega kind of nodding their head and going, yeah, you guys are pretty much on the right path. Way back in Sonic the Hedgehog 3, when you go to the shrine of the Master Emerald, there is a mural in the background which depicts Supersonic fighting against something that has stolen the Master Emerald. And fans speculated that this was not Supersonic, but an ancient hedgehog, some other hedgehog who had the ability to control the power of the Chaos Emeralds, who was able to basically achieve a super state. Sega has basically not come out and said it, but they've very much winked and nodded in that general direction, with the implication that hedgehogs, for some reason, seem to be particularly apt at manipulating the energies of the Chaos Emeralds. We also learn in the adventure titles that the emeralds basically manifest will and thought and feelings into raw energy, hence chaos. It's potential, it's all untapped potential.
This could just be me, having basically gone back into Warhammer, but I'm like, this is just all the more reason that I'm like, I really want to say something against the, oh, yeah, Sonic has to be crossover with everything, but this is pretty, you basically just described the actual forces of chaos from Warhammer.
Yeah, no, there's something to be said for that. And the thing that makes the Master Emerald so powerful is it can neutralize the energy of the Chaos Emeralds. We know a little bit about this because when Chaos ascended to Perfect Chaos, it deliberately only used all the negativity in the Emeralds. Sonic was able to use the positive feelings as well as the people of Station Square rallying together to ascend into Supersonic despite the Emeralds having been drained of power. In Sonic Adventure 2, Knuckles confirms that the Master Emerald can neutralize the Chaos Emeralds and bring them under control. So they have to do this in order to stop the chain reaction that Gerald built into the arc. Because, turns out, getting your only living family member murdered in front of your face will drive a man to desperate measures. So, the giant cannon, which the arc had, was designed that when all 7 emeralds were placed into it, it would activate a huge routine that would lock down the arc and fire the Eclipse cannon on the Earth. And so Knuckles is like, well, let's just turn the emeralds off. And they do. And then the Bio Lizard's like, lol, nah, fam, I got this. And just merges with the cannon and tries to just drag the space colony into the Earth anyway. Sonic and Shadow, being the main characters, ascend to their super forms and defeat the final hazard, bringing the game to its close. This is where stuff goes a little nutty, so try to bear with me as I try to very quickly explain all of this. Next is Sonic Advance. The only thing Sonic Advance did is introduce Cream the Rabbit. Cream the Rabbit is easy moto and weird fur bait. She's like canonically 10. Please stop. There's Sonic Advance 2. More of the same. Sonic Pinball Party. I never played it. I really can't tell you anything about it. Sonic Battle. Oh boy. So I get to go into this. Sonic Battle. At the time, we thought Sonic Battle was not canon. Turns out it is. Ah, man. So, Sonic Battle was a relatively obscure Game Boy Advance title dropped rather without much fanfare in January of 2004. It's a weird RPG fighting game where this weird robot named Emerald shows up and starts just hanging out with Sonic and friends. I can't really say that they were, becoming friends because Emerald never really develops a personality. But it turns out that he becomes more powerful when he absorbs Chaos Emeralds. And Emerald's whole thing is if he sees an attack, he can copy it, master it, and use it at will. And that includes things that physiologically should be beyond him, like Sonic Spin Dash or Shadow using Chaos Control. He can just do those things. He just can. And the game goes this whole thing where everyone like trying to become friends with him. And Eggman's like, this is like an ancient war weapon, right? This thing doesn't have a personality. And he loads the 7 Chaos Emeralds into it, which drives the Emerald berserk, and Sonic is forced to destroy him. And we're like, yep, definitely the last we'll see of him. So then Sonic Heroes drops, and Sonic Heroes was supposed to be a GameCube exclusive, and then a whole bunch of things happened where they're like, no, it's not going to be GameCube exclusive. You're going to release it on the PS2 and the Xbox as well. And they're like, but we literally built this game's engine to run on the GameCube. And they're like, yeah, that sucks. You're going to release it for everything now. And they're like, we don't have time. And they're like, yeah, that sucks. You're not getting any additional time. Make it work. It did not work. Sonic Heroes introduced a whole bunch of plot points and did nothing with them. Shadow shows up again, and he has amnesia. They don't do anything with that. They introduce E123, the final E-series robot, and he wants to kill Eggman for some reason. Eggman really has a thing about his inventions turning against him, because Metal Sonic shows up again too, and he also tries to kill Eggman, and neither of these take. The Chaotix are back. They're canon now. And around this time, a little thing happened. The little thing was known as Sonic X. Guys, I hate to be the one to break this news to you. Sonic X was really not good. And I hear some in the back going, but Snek, it adapted Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. Yeah, kinda, sorta, not really. And the entire third season was just bolted on at the last second because freaking TMS. TMS has this habit of making 2-season very mediocre animes and then just churning out a third season that completely contradicts the themes found in those first 2 seasons.
But this is the anime that literally has the the one girl goes back to her home planet where it's very clear that she like rams into one of the other robots. And they're like, oh, look, she left and went home. And it's like, no, she's dead.
She did. She very did.
She did.
Yes, because this was a 4Kids dub, and all the original voices that had voiced from Sonic Adventure up to Sonic Heroes were no longer doing that. The 4Kids dub voices took over, and in one regards, that's a good thing because that gave us Mike Pollock as Eggman. And I think that was probably the smartest thing they could have done after Dean Bristow's tragic passing shortly after, I want to say, Sonic Adventure 2 was when that happened. So really having him step into the role was the best thing they could have done, and I'm glad that they did. The rest of the 4Kids voice cast was a little hit and miss. Dan Green as Knuckles I thought was actually pretty good. Tails' voice actress is pretty good. Some of them were more annoying. Like they gave Vector this like ungodly voice. Like Vector is the one I would say who had a 4Kids voice.
You gotta go to the computer room.
Yeah, and like honestly, like Sonic X was not very good, and it was really like, guys, there's this super relatable tag-along kid known as Chris Thorndike, and he's Sonic's best friend now. And like, does he contribute anything? No, he just gets in the way and is super whiny and annoying. But you're gonna
I
love
wish
him.
I was cool. Chris Thorndike, you will never be cool. Meanwhile, the Sonic fandom is literally for me, for real.
And like, it's not good. It's not good. And the Metarex arc was like the worst part of Sonic X. It was bad, like really, really bad. I'm shocked at the worship that Sonic X got, but it wasn't good. I watched the whole thing, guys. You can't convince me otherwise.
Yes, he did watch the entire thing, and I know this because this is about the time that I met little Snek, and he was like, oh boy, I can't wait to go home and watch 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and also Sonic X.
And ever since...
Also, I'm going to go after that and play Shadow the Hedgehog. Meanwhile, there's Professor, and I'll go like, oh, I felt myself age like 50 years.
Now I'm the one who aged 50 years spontaneously. And here's a fun fact for you guys at home is every year on July 4th, without fail, I make it a point to find the stars of four kids singing the national anthem and send it to Ditaku and the other Tomodachi bros.
Yes, he does this every year.
Without fail. And I will continue until my dying day. Back into things that don't suck, there was Sonic Advance 3. Sonic Advance 3 actually had Emerald come back as the revamped attack android known as Gemerald, because Sonic Advance 3 also had this two-player thing that was kind of reminiscent of Knuckles Chaotix, which I thought was pretty cool. Really good game. The Sonic Advance games are really good. If you get a chance to play them, you should. Then there was Sonic Rush, which was on the DS, and I actually never played this game. I really can't say too much, except that's where Blaze the Cat comes from.
Blaze the Cat came from it, and also Hideki Naganuma did the music.
Okay.
You know this because it is literally Clockwork's favorite music composer. Also, he did a lot of Sega. Like he did Jet Set Radio's music, and he has some really good. He has a really good sense of arrangement.
Nice.
I like his stuff.
All right. Well, in November of 2005, we got Shadow the Hedgehog. I might have talked about this game a little bit. Might have done a whole 25-minute review going into great length about my thoughts and feelings and the cultural zeitgeist that surrounded this game. How do I even describe this? Bad. I would start with bad. But it was really the ultimate product of its times. Fans were like, Shadow's so cool. Shadow should get his own game. And Sega was like, we see. What else should a spin-off Sonic game have? And they're like, guns and emo music. And Sega's
cursing.
And Sega's like, oh, okay, okay, that's what you want. That's what you will get. And so we got emo music and guns and cursing. And oh man, this game is bad. I pre-ordered Shadow the Hedgehog. Let that be a cautionary tale to people who still pre-order video games. I loved Sonic Adventure 2, and I was like, Sonic Heroes was a step down, but it wasn't the worst game possible. And that's because the worst games possible had yet to come. Chiefly Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. And how do I even begin? You know what? The most important thing to know, and this is an interest of fairness thing, is Sonic Team was split in half. And half the team went to work on Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, and the other half went to work on Sonic and the Secret Rings. Sonic and the Secret Rings would release a year later on the Wii, and it was also very bad. But Sonic 2006 not only was a bigger AAA release, it was infamously terrible. The game was a barely functional mess of code. It would crash randomly. Several gameplay mechanics just didn't work. And they had this weird, hyper-realistic art style for the human characters, including this random human girl who was Sonic's love interest inexplicably throughout the game. And the only thing 2006 did right was it retconned itself out of the story. Because the whole thing's hinge on this thing called the Flames of Disaster. And it was supposed to be this event that would cause untold calamity the world over. And this entity known as Iblis shows up, pretending to be Shadow the Hedgehog. Don't ask, it doesn't really make sense in context. So then we get Silver the Hedgehog, who traveled back from a dystopian hellhole future to try to stop the event known as the Iblis Trigger. which he believes he can do by killing Sonic the Hedgehog. Why? Because this world is populated by racists who cannot tell male hedgehogs apart from one another. And the whole thing is the flames of disaster are so powerful that they influence space and time. The way they decided to prevent the flames of disaster from happening was to lock it in the heart of a teenage girl, who is then told she is not allowed to cry because it will literally doom the world. You can see where this plan had holes. So then she cries, Iblis is released, Sonic is killed, then Sonic is revived with the Dragon Balls, Chaos Emeralds, and then Sonic, Shadow, and Silver become super and kill Iblis and reseal the flames of disaster, but doing so turns back time to before the events of the game ever happened, so Sonic 2006 retconned itself out of the story. And thank goodness for that small mercy, because holy crap, this game is bad.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's all real, by the way. I did not exaggerate that one bit.
Oh, I'm not doubting it. I think it's wild, and honestly, it makes me realize that Snapcube's, version where they have Mephilas, be Memphis Joe, who's just trying to make Fortnite a reality, isn't that much of a stretch.
It really isn't. And Silver, fun fact, was originally supposed to be a mink. There was early design documents that was Silver the Mink, but then they decided to make him a hedgehog so they could have their, Goku, Vegeta, Trunks trifecta. Because even Sega can't bring themselves to like Goten.
Well, to be perfectly honest, Trunks has way more going for him than Goten ever did.
That is very true. So the next mistake they made was Sonic Rivals, which was a game made on the PSP. And that's really all I have to say to explain why it was a huge mistake. Anyway.
Guys, UMG, it's the wave of the future.
Then there was Sonic and the Secret Rings, which was the first of 2 stories set in the Sonic Storybook series, which was supposed to be a set of spin-offs where Sonic would enter different fictional realms, aka the public domain, and have wacky adventures. In this case, Sonic landed in the 1001 Nights, and they sort of attempt to adapt the story of Aladdin, and sort of don't. And the whole thing is Sonic meets the genie of the lamp, who is a cute Animu girl. It turns out the genie of the ring is the Eraser Jin, who wants to destroy the stories of the 1001 Nights because that will set him free into the real world, and, in the wake of destruction, everyone else will die. So Sonic's like, oh yeah, I can help. And while he's fighting, Sonic gets hit by this weird fiery arrow the Eraser Jin uses that threatens to kill Sonic, because that was just like the thing at this time, is they really wanted to kill Sonic. So did the fans, but that's besides the point. And the whole thing was this very clumsy, awkward tilt to the Wiimote in lieu of holding the control stick affair. It was really bad. I owned the game and never finished it because I couldn't bring myself to deal with the bad controls.
And yet the next one is one that I know you finished because the main theme...
We will get to that.
Was one that you really liked.
It's a really good song, interest and fairness. The next game was actually Sonic Rush Adventure, another DS game I never actually got around to playing. Supposedly it was pretty good, and it also introduced some weird Australian girl that's really base-breaking in the Sonic fandom. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you at that point. At this point, they did Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, the very first one, in fact, back in the Wii in 2007, a thing that would become a tradition with every Olympic Games up until the 2024 Games, where Sega decided, not Sega, rather, the company they had partnered with for the Olympic Games, decided that Mario and Sonic, there's no money in Mario and Sonic, the real money's in cryptocurrency and NFTs. That's A real thing that actually happened, by the way. I am not making that up.
Considering the way that the 2024 Olympics happened, maybe Sega probably looked at that and watched the burning, the basically watched the Olympics on the Titanic, hop onto the iceberg, proceed to pour gasoline over themselves and go, we're making a statement here, as they're proceeding to sink while on fire, and Sega's watching this going, I think I just dodged a bullet.
Dodged several bullets. So the next mistake was Sonic Rivals 2. That was a PSP game. Enough said. The next mistake was Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. It's really bad. Don't play it. The next mistake was Sonic Chronicles, The Dark Brotherhood. It was really bad. But this time you can't actually blame Sonic Team. That was BioWare.
Also Ken Penders.
So,
very Ken Penders.
Yeah, let's address that elephant in the room, I guess. So, Archie Comics went on way longer than it had any right to. I think they might actually still exist, although I don't know why.
No, they don't.
Okay.
Good. I mean, Archie Comics does, but the Sonic Comics do not. They ended in 2018.
Right. So, here's the thing. There was a Knuckles comic. There was this guy named Ken Penders who's really litigation happy, so I'm not in a big hurry to talk about him at great length. Dude decided that he owned the intellectual concept of cartoon echidnas and caused a great deal of legal trouble. So Sega now pretty much refuses to go into any greater detail about the echidna tribe than Sonic Adventure 1 was willing to delve into.
Well, see, the funny thing is that a lot of it was largely because Archie, from the court proceedings, because this is Sonic, and of course, everything has to be chronicled in a autistically precise manner. Basically, they proceeds to go, okay, we need to know where Ken Penders' contract. We need to know what actually you expected of him. Archie had none of that, nothing. And yet this guy had been working for them for at least 12 years at this point. And he was not just a random Joe Schmo. He was integrally writing multiple lines of comics for them. And basically had an entire basically the entire universe. And yet they had nothing, not even a, hey, you're a contract employee. You're not technically even our employee. You're just working, for this period or whatever. They didn't even have that. And so that's the reason why he was able to basically do what he did. And they had to effectively reboot the entire comic just to just get away from what he had done. But that being said, there were a lot of people that are really, really, really invested in his era of the comic. And more power to you if you are. It's not really my thing. And honestly, even when his art was quote-unquote good, which is to say aping early 90s Sonic cover art for the video games, it wasn't particularly good, and him trying to step away from that and is truly grotesque. And I'm not being superlative. I mean the actual grotesque artistic movement. It is just, if you haven't look up the Lara Sue Chronicles right now. While you're listening to us, open a new tab, Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever. Just Ken Penders' The Lara Sue Chronicles, and you will see it. And let me tell you, you need to. You owe it to yourself. Am I off base there, Professor?
No, you are spot on. And here's the next hot take. None of the Sonic comics have ever been good. I don't care. Yeah. IDW is garbage just as much as all the rest. Not even,
I was about to say, not even the Sonic Boom ones, the one where Styx the Badger basically is like Alex Jones, but as a 12-year-old little girl.
interest of fairness, I didn't read the IDW Sonic Boom run. Now, I know what they did to the Sonic Boom guys who were writing for them, which is sufficient reason to not give my money to IDW. Uh, but yeah, it's got to go in the lump sum. The comics have never been good. And the
Uh,
weird investment that people have in them is really misplaced.
I mean, that's fair. And yeah, I mean, IDW is kind of awful just for the fact that they will not stop trying to make Jenica a thing.
Among
And
other
even as
sins.
someone looking at them, just from the outside in, I'm like, oh boy, here's a character who makes all the other characters invalid. Don't you like her? And it's like, why would I like her? And so even beyond, the entire lore reasons for not to like her, I'm like, why do you keep trying to make her a thing? This is the same reason why I don't like Miles Morales. I mean, not our boy Tails. I'm actually, Darth Miles.
Darth Miles, yes.
Yeah, there's our good boy Tails, and then
Yep,
there's Darth Miles.
that
Darth
checks out.
Miles, and why you keep making Kamala Khan, trying to make her a thing? Why are you trying to keep making America Chavez a thing? None of these characters are good, but you keep being like, oh, don't you want to play with them? Don't you think they're cool? Don't you want to write fan fictions of them, think about them, and buy their merchandise? Like, no.
Absolutely not. Which is basically the response everyone had to the Dark Brotherhood, because that game is bad. And apparently, if the rumors I've read are true, somewhere during development, the entire game soundtrack was compromised and the files were lost, and they basically had to rush to rebuild it at the last second. I'm not going to get into a full review because honestly, this game is so bad it kind of merits review. But it's like this game was just atrociously bad. Every bad idea an RPG can have, this game had. And BioWare used to make good games. This was not one of them. So
I'm
after,
still waiting for, the Knights of the Snek Republic.
well, I mean,
Come on, guys. We got it. We got to bully him. We got to bully him. We got to make this happen.
oh boy. So the next game in line was Sonic Unleashed. And despite what it might sound like when I tell you it involves Sonic turning into a big werewolf and the game was heavily inspired by God of War, it was actually pretty good. Not amazing, not life changing, but entertaining. It was good. The whole thing hinged on Eggman tricking Sonic into turning into Super Sonic so he could use this very specific machine to siphon the Emerald's power. In so doing, he literally tore the planet apart in order to release this evil spirit within known as Dark Gaia. In so doing, Sonic has this weird side effect where at night he turns into the Werehog monster. Now, he's still him, his personality is still completely intact, he just turns into a big lumbering beast who doesn't really run as fast but can smash monsters with his big old claws. There was actually two different versions of the game, one for the Wii and the PS2, and one for the Xbox 360 and the PS3. The latter of which was much harder and had a much longer end-game sequence, but I never played those. I actually had the Wii version, so I had to pretend that I was playing, Punch Out for the Wii every time I played the Werehog level, because you attacked by swinging the Wiimote and the nunchuck.
But don't you know, wiggle mechanics are the future,
Yeah,
and
definitely.
definitely not a gimmick that Nintendo proceeded to go, yeah, we're just going to pretend that this never happened,
Yep.
even though we
We were the ones
sold an
responsible for
entire,
it.
console based off of them. Yeah, no, we have no idea what happened.
Yep. So the next
We we
game, in fact,
we
was
fit this.
yep.
What?
We were responsible.
We don't know what you're talking about.
The next game, in fact, kind of exemplified that because that was Sonic and the Black Knight, which of the two storybook games was definitely the superior one. It was goofy.
Whoa,
It
whoa.
it wasn't really, I wouldn't say good game, But I will say it was an entertaining game. I
Are you
enjoyed
saying it
playing
was
it.
Greatest Storm? Hey-o.
There's something to be said for that. It was good. It was fun. Like I'm not gonna say that it was refined. It wasn't, but it was just this goofy, fun game where you just ran around, swing the Wiimote like a crazy person, and then Sonic at the very end, gets the swords of the Knights of the Round and turns into Makai Knight Garo.
I'll say this. I think it's funny that they made Shadow into Lancelot and Knuckles into Parzival, which is just, that is, like, someone who actually knows the Knights of the Round lore, that is like, mwah, that is apt. And there's some sad, poor, underpaid, overworked Sega story writer who deserves, at least one chili dog for that, because that is brilliant.
That's very true. Now, I'll tell you another funny thing is the whole thing is when Sonic arrives in the Tales of the Knights of the Round, he meets Merlina. So Sonic the Hedgehog did what it took Fate Grand Order decades to get around to doing. And
Actually, no.
really,
Prototype Merlin is actually from the notes of the original Fate
oh,
series. So, if
touche.
anything, Fate and so actually, which would have been about the same period of time.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah. So, yeah. So I guess ultimately what we're saying is with our Saint Elsewhere, situation is that Sonic and Fate basically exist in the same universe, not only narratively speaking, but also chronologically speaking.
That's very true. And he worked with Merlina to fight the titular Black Knight. And the whole thing is it's revealed that the story's been corrupted. The Black Knight was Sir Arthur, and that because Arthur had gone mad with power, he had to be stopped. And so Sonic's like, "Oh, well, yeah, I'll help. I don't like seeing
I've gone
people in
mad with
distress."
power. Oh, first time.
Well, it turns out that's a lie. There was never a King Arthur. It was a doll created by Merlina because she was afraid that if the stories of the Knights of the Round finished, that their world would essentially cease to be. And in order to keep the world going, she would create the story herself by making up the legend of Sir Arthur. Sonic just kind of got caught in the crossfire. So at the end, she reveals herself to be the Dark Sorceress who's been manipulating all the monsters the entire time. And that's when you actually have to align yourself with the Knights of the Round and obtain their weapons. And you turn into, Makai Knight Sonic to defeat her. And Sonic's like, what's the point of a story that never ends? The story has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's how life works. And if it doesn't have an ending, then it would be kind of a boring story, and no one would learn anything or take anything away from it.
And then it becomes a tabletop battle system.
Oh no, it gets better because it turns out that the talking sword that Sonic's been using this whole game. By the way, the sword talks and it's named Caliburn. And it turns out that Caliburn was one of the broken fragments of the true Excalibur, but only the actual King Arthur has the power to wield Caliburn at its greatest. So it turns out that Sonic the Hedgehog was actually King Arthur the whole time.
Hey y'all, welcome to the greatest.
I'm just gonna let that one sit for a second because, yeah,
I wanted to make a joke about, King Arthur hates furries, but I think it works even better knowing now that now I did not know that about that twist.
yes, Sonic the Hedgehog is actually the true form of King Arthur.
And he hates furries.
And he hates furries, yes. So that's a thing that happened. So
I really honestly, I'm kind of saddened that the storybook series ended here because, like, if this is how they treat like, very mundane things like King Arthur, I really would love to see their take on something um like the Magnificent Seven, or Crime in Italy, like, Mark Twain or something like that.
That would be very interesting. The next mistake on Sonic's agenda was Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1, which was bad. It was bad. It was just really, really, really bad. They were trying to basically recapture the spark that Sonic 3 and Knuckles had caught and failed. The game was rushed. It's not good. It's buggy. It's glitchy. It's frustrating. It's bad. The next mistake was Sonic Free Riders, which was also really, really, really bad. The Rider series is a series of racing games, and of them, the first one is probably the best one, and even then, that one was just like all right. But then there was a ray of hope. That ray of hope was known as Sonic Colors. Sonic Colors was really freaking good.
Roger Craig Davis just comes down from the heavens, just with a very, very sassy grin on his face.
Very, very sassy Sonic. Yes, Roger Craig Smith took over the role of Sonic the Hedgehog, and several of the voice cast got replaced around this time. But I would argue the series needed kind of that jolt of lightning to it, and I think Sonic Colors and all of the changes that it incorporated were precisely what the Doctor ordered. In this case, the egg-shaped, very sarcastic Mike Pollock voiced Doctor.
Okay, so I have to ask then, with that in mind, have you played the remaster of Sonic Colors that just happened?
I have not. I've heard that they licensed it to a third party and it's atrociously bad. So one of the major things happening in the fandom right now is a huge fan-made mod that's supposed to basically fix the ever-loving snot out of it. So we'll see how that develops. I think the first test release of it dropped on... I saw something about it on Twitter a week or two ago.
Because I was gonna say, like, I know you unironically like Sonic Colors. You're like, yeah, modern Sonic sucks, but
Sonic Colors. Sonic Colors is really freaking good. I will fight anyone who says otherwise, because it was. They basically took their time. They polished the formula. They added a fun little twist with the Wisps. The whole thing is there's this alien world known as Planet Wisp, and Eggman's like, hey, free real estate for my theme park, and he builds a theme park by chaining random alien planets together and builds Eggman Land using Planet Wisp as its core.
I really wish that Eggman would stop trying to colonize other planets by chaining them to the Earth.
I know, right? So Sonic
keeps happening.
Yeah, it's weird that keeps coming up. So Sonic and Tails go, and they completely revamped the basic storytelling. It's much more comedy. It's more relaxed, and Eggman gets some new sidekicks in the form of Orbot and Cubot, who are still around to this day. So Eggman has some fun new characters to bounce off of, and it's this big, flashy, colorful world, and it's so good. Sonic Colors is just freaking-tastic.
Honestly, I think Eggman is at his best when he has somebody to bounce off of, and sadly, unfortunately, Metal Sonic really has nothing going for him, and he keeps losing all his other, foils. Like, Shadow technically is good, and Knuckles is, Knuckles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he needs somebody who's just not going to betray him. So...
That's very true. And Sonic Colors is great. The next game in line was Sonic Generations. Sonic Generations was also great if you played the 360 or PS3 version. The PC port was a little rough, and some mods are out there that do fix these issues. Sega, please...
Or if you're like us during the cold snap in 2021 and you have keep getting brownouts of power, and it goes from being difficult to being nightmare mode.
Yeah, that made it a lot harder.
It's actually actually happened to us. Let me
Yeah,
tell you.
it was frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Yes. So we're freezing to death while going, don't worry, this is not going to be like the cremation of Sam McGee. We have power still. We're going to play video games. And then the power cuts out. And then we can't access the Chow Garden forever.
That was Sonic Adventure 1. But yeah, we played Sonic Adventure 2, and Generations during that time. And it was a lot harder when the power cuts out randomly and deletes your save file. So yeah, my currently the save file for the Chow Garden on my PC version of Sonic Adventure is currently inaccessible, and going there crashes the game. That's a thing.
Now, we have figured out a way of doing it, but
Yeah,
it's a process,
it
so
is. That I'll get to that when I get to that. But Sonic Generations has a time travel element where old school Sonic meets modern Sonic, and they team up because, well, old Eggman and new Eggman have teamed up, and
yeah.
you.
Now I'm just gonna say they kind of chickened out. They really should have had, rascally trickster Sonic getting on the nerves of modern mellow Sonic, but they didn't do that by not giving OG Sonic a voice. They made him quiet, like a silent movie protagonist, which is fine. But I think it could have been so much more,
Oh no,
honestly.
definitely. And then around this time, they also decided that certain characters would always be like in both, and then some would only be in the past, which includes Mighty the Armadillo. And I like Mighty. I'm just like, guys, come on. What is what the armadillo hate? I want to know.
Well, he's no Novena, that's for sure.
That's true. So next was Sonic Dash, which was a mobile game. I played it briefly. It's aggressively okay. It's eh. I can take it or leave it. Then there was Sonic Lost World, and Sonic Lost World was their attempt at basically doing Mario Galaxy, but with Sonic in it. It wasn't good. I'm not going to say it's like the worst Sonic game, because it's not, but it wasn't good either. And then we get into a very interesting thing that happened in 2014. We got Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Where do I even start? So,
Well, you should probably explain your feelings on Sonic Boom and then also explain your feelings on the cartoon because it's funny, like it's literally a chicken and the egg situation where like the development of one influenced the development of the other. And when one crashed and burned, as I'm sure people who are aware of Sonic will know, it affected the other, which is really a shame because one of them was hamstrung and the other one kind of suffered because of it.
that is very true. In fact, I actually recommend that you guys watch the What Happened episode for Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Because honestly, the ideas, the start of the idea that became Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric was so much better. And it was hamstrung by the devs, it was hamstrung by the Wii U hardware because unfortunately, much like Lost World, it was forced onto the Wii U of all things. Uh, it's a really bad time all around, and it's an alternate universe story. Sonic Boom is considered a canon alternate universe to the mainline Sega Sonic canon, and it was kind of doing its own thing where it was kind of like Indiana Jones inspired, where they were like, oh, they're treasure hunters, and Amy Rose has a discernible personality for a change, and she's an archaeologist and brings her friends with her as they explore these weird ruins, and they meet this snake creature named Lyric, and Lyric is trying to take over the world because he has the power to manipulate high technology. So like one of the coolest moments in the game, and I have to say this, I like this bit a lot, where Eggman is initially defeated by Lyric because again, Lyric can control high technology. So Eggman makes a clockwork robo controlled by like a bicycle pedal and some like levers, and actually pilots this completely manual robot into battle. And it's actually really cool. I like that bit a lot. Uh, there's a weird time travel element, and there's these weird like crystal shards that are very vaguely defined that are kind of loosely the parallel of the Chaos Emeralds. Uh, the Emeralds aren't. No, that's not 100% true. In the show, they actually talk about the Master Emerald, but they don't mention the Chaos Emeralds, interestingly enough. Lyric is defeated and put into cryo prison, and they were like, this is one of the most hilariously broken Wii U games ever made, because prior to the only patch it ever got, they discovered that if Knuckles used his drill dive ability, it forces him into kind of like a jump animation, which makes him go a little bit higher. But if you pause during that animation, it reset the animation, so Knuckles could fly. Knuckles could fly better than Tails, and you could speed run the game in a matter of minutes by just having Knuckles fly you to the end. And then they were like, we're going to make an animated series based in Sonic Boom. And then they made the best Sonic cartoon ever made. They're like, it's just a comedy. It's Sonic just being this goofy, smart mouth guy, and they just kind of pal around and do goofy things. It's exactly what Sonic needs to be. And it's so, so, so much better than literally anything that's come before it. So, like, one of the worst Sonic games gives rise to the best Sonic series. I don't know how it works, but that's how it worked.
I mean, okay. First off, I have to ask, what are your thoughts on your fellow Snek being sent to freezer prison?
I mean, he wasn't really a snack. He didn't have hair, so probably not snack. And you know what? I wouldn't mind being locked in an ice freezer, given the state of the world as the way it is today. Lock me in the freezer. I'll pop out when John Spartan is needed.
Wow, that was a reference.
If you get it, you get it. You probably also have very good taste.
Oh, geez. Does that lead us to Sonic Forces?
Not yet, because next there was actually the Sonic Boom sequel, Fire and Ice, and basically no one played it because Sonic Boom as a game had such a bad reputation. It was pretty all right. I played it. Uh, it was actually good. Sticks the Badger playable, 10 out of 10. The best Sonic girl is playable. That's all that matters to me. It was good.
I'm just saying, does she actually still have her? I don't know. Does she actually have her Alex Jones like disaster, crazy conspiracy theorist
Yes, she is still
personality
very.
from the cartoon?
Yes, she is. She is very much like
Excellent.
that. The games apparently are canon to the show, and vice versa. Just the games are more adventure, and the show is more slice of life with some miniature action bits mixed in. The next one to drop was Sonic Mania, where basically a bunch of guys who made fan games and ROM hacks got to make their own official Sonic game. And it introduced the Phantom Ruby, which had the power to distort space and time. So some of the levels they went to were brand new, and some were remixes of classic Sonic stages. The main gameplay is very good. The special stages are garbage. Because
I'll just say this: it has a Knuckles, Knuckles, and Knuckles mode.
Yes.
11 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned.
Knuckles and Knuckles mode is the best, especially because if you do that, at the end of the game, Sonic or Tails are supposed to be piloting the plane, but if you're in Knuckles and Knuckles mode, it's literally just another Knuckles. Which is just beautiful, and I'm so glad they did it that way. Then was Sonic Forces, which was them going, hey, we still have the engine from Sonic Colors lying around. Should we like make a game? And they're like, yeah, but like don't put any heart or soul into it, okay? And they're like, okay, can do. So they made this
And yet the irony is that they literally did the one thing that people have been screaming for since the Sonic Adventure games. They're like, we want our creative character.
Yep, they got their own in canon OC donut steel generator to make their own goofy looking Sonic OC to play in an official Sonic game.
And let me tell you, we are freezing to death because, so let's take our mind off of it by playing Sonic while, in the few hours we can.
Yep.
We made one of the best OCs.
She was a yellow bear who wore Crocs. Like, we literally would not put any other shoes on her that weren't Crocs.
And the reason for this, we discovered, is that the Crocs actually will make a little, like, squeak sound when you run. And we're like, that's perfect. This is perfect. Why would we change this?
And then we would put, like, stupid meme shirts on her. Like, there's the Sonic meme shirt in the game, and we put that on her for a time. I forgot what we called her.
Wasn't there one that was like, gotta go fast?
Yeah, there's gotta go
she
fast
was Ursula.
Ursula. Yeah, we called her
She was
Ursula.
Yes.
Because, subtle humor is our specialty.
Oh, definitely.
Sonic Forces is not a good game, but I will also argue that it's not really a bad game. It's a very indecisive, directionless drifter of a game.
It is. It is an excellent game. Not a good game, but an excellent game.
That's fair. And
I would say it's about on the same level as Bloodlines. As much as I like Bloodlines, I'm just going to say you kind of have to know what you're getting into with it, even though I love it to death.
Yeah. Also, the best weapon in the game is the flamethrower. Like, once you get the flamethrower weapon, there's literally no reason to use anything but.
Yes.
Like, every boss that you fight as your OC is trivialized by the flamethrower. But next was...
I'm going to fight you. Ow.
Burn.
Wow, we did it again.
The next game was Team Sonic Racing, and Team Sonic Racing is really freaking good.
It's really good and also really, really tough if you're playing against the CPU. The CPU does not mess around.
They expect you to, have your act together by the time they pretty much expect you to play the campaign mode before you do like the online modes and stuff. They expect you to know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that brings us into the 2020s. There's not too many games left to cover. Next was the Sonic Colors Ultimate re-release. I didn't play it. Apparently it's really bad, and they botched a lot of stuff, so that's unfortunate. There was Sonic Origins, which is literally just Sonic the Hedgehog 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles, and I think CD, repackaged so they could take the old listing off the Steam store and put a new one on there. That's it.
Which is funny because the original was part of the Sega Mega Drive Masterpiece collection, which I'm pretty sure both you and I still actually have.
We do, yes. Next was Sonic Frontiers. That was the open world game that finally gave an open world protagonist the ability to actually get somewhere in a reasonable amount of time.
And it had some of the in a game series in a company localized entirely in your kitchen that has excellent music. It has fan freaking tastic music.
Yes, it does.
Very good OST. Very good game.
Especially as the anniversary update added it, so you could go through and find scattered throughout the different islands, different song tracks from previous Sonic games. And
oh, really?
Yes, a lot of them even. Like, most of the vocal tracks from Adventure are in. Like, I found Night of the Wind was one of the first ones I found.
Oh, that's That's just ironic. That is.
It's a lot. Like they added so much stuff. They added a super challenge final dungeon, which I cannot actually clear despite having max stats. Maybe someday I'll go back and try it again, but it was too frustrating. So honestly, like the best thing to do now is just run around and find neat stuff.
Didn't you beat hell in Cave Story?
Yes.
And yet you can't. Oh, okay. I see how it is. All right.
The thing is, it's frustrating because dying sets you back so far, and most of the times when you die in the final dungeon, it's because you missed a jump, and you're jumping a lot. In Cave Story, I at least knew where the ground was and relative to my position the entire time I was playing.
Yes, it's just a darn shame. The ground is like, oh, there's the ground, and it's covered in insta-death spikes.
Whoops.
Well,
Frontiers is also special because it's kind of the place where they codified the lore. A lot of the notes, the Eggman memos, the things that you find not only help clarify what is and isn't canon, it also answered some of the random questions we had. For years, we weren't 100% sure if Maria Robotnik was supposed to be Eggman's sister or his cousin. And Frontiers, of all things, answers that question for us. She was his cousin. And then he talks about, what about the Black Arms? What about the Zeddy? And all these other villains from the franchise. And yeah, they're all canon. The ending of Frontiers canonizes Styx the Badger in the Sega Sonic canon. So that's a thing. But yeah, Sonic Frontiers is really good, and it fixes the issue of modern open world games by letting you play as a protagonist that can actually beat the game in reasonable time. The next
shots fired, Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Shots fired.
The next game was The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, the third unofficial instance of the Sonic Storybook games. It's not officially branded as such, and it was literally launched as an April Fool's joke as a spoof of Murder on the Orient Express. I need to sit down and play it. I have it downloaded, and I haven't played it yet. Leave a comment down below. Should I play it for the channel? You guys tell me.
Yes. The answer is yes. You should. If I've seen 20 reaction things that various VTubers have had of the game, and if half of them are correct, you need to play this game.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I'll do it for the channel sometime. Let's see, we're down to the last couple now. So next was Sonic Superstars, which was supposed to be their answer to the new Super Mario Brothers games. I've heard really good things about it, but I haven't had the chance to play it yet. I'll have to make that a point. That would be a good one for Tomo Brocade. And then we are up to Sonic X Shadow Generations and Sonic Rumble, which are not out yet as of this recording. Though Sonic X Shadow Generations will be out in late October of 2024, meaning that that will probably have launched before this episode has gone live. But I am looking forward to it. It seems like this is their chance to fix the PC port for Generations and also expound on one of the most popular characters just in time for the third film. And
Sonic... I am definitely going to be maining Shadow in Rumble.
That's fair. I'll be maining Big the Cat, the best boy. And Sonic Rumble looks to be good fun. And I guess the only thing we haven't touched on at this point is the film. So real quickly, to give you guys the TLDR on that, Ditaku and I were like, okay, we have to go see Sonic the Hedgehog the movie because it's going to be bad. It's going to be this decade's the Super Mario Brothers movie, bearing in mind the Imagine Illumination Studio animated film was not out yet. And so we were like, yeah, let's go. We went and saw it. And then as we went to dinner that night, we were like, that was a good film. Yes.
I hate to say this, but this was a good film. And then we both looked at each other and were like, oh no. this is actually really good. We need to tell Cog about this.
This is
And so
actually a
then
good
Cog's
film.
like,
Yes.
guys, I just saw it with my son. This is a really great film. It's like, oh no.
What has happened? What has caused this? So yeah, it was good.
I will say one thing, and this is going to be like probably my third hot take. I don't think Idris Elba should have been Knuckles. I just don't like Idris Elba as he's just he literally is The Rock, but he's just got a British accent.
Yeah.
It's literally just, hi, I'm a big guy, but I've got a British accent. Oh ho ho, isn't that unusual? Yes, and it's literally the only reason why anybody knows who you are. You should thank your lucky stars that you have a posh British accent.
Yeah, I mean,
So
he does tend to play the same archetype every film he's in.
yeah, just like The Rock, which is why
Yeah, no, I get you. Then there was Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which was even better. And they did a really good job. And it's really disjointing for me to hear Tails' Sega Sonic canon voice actress. But I'm hearing Dewey Duck coming out of Sonic instead of Roger Craig Smith. So that's a little disjointed. But like barring that.
I gotta say though, Jim Carrey is like a perfect
Yes.
Eggman. He is a perfect Eggman. And the fact that they just have him just like go from like I am they literally, you can kind of see his arc from like I am a very grounded, realistic character in the first film to just going absolutely nuts at the end of the second. And it looks like he is going completely off the wall, fluffernutter, peanut butter, going to literally tinkle on the moon to utilize the les memes as if the trailers are an indication. So.
Yeah. I said it in my review, and I'll say it again. I didn't think Jim Carrey had any life or energy left in him, and then they put him as Eggman, and I'm like, oh my gosh, he actually still has it. That's really cool to see.
And honestly, it seems like it actually was like good for him because like looking at his Twitter feed, like it is like a kind of a KT event. Like there before, it's like he's doing the usual celebrity like, oh no, it's the current thing, and then afterwards he's like he actually is like happy.
Yeah.
And like he seems to be enjoying himself, and it's like, wow. Is this what you needed to do? You needed to get the crazy out so you can just enjoy life again.
Yeah. It's like, and can we just say, it's like, is the script for Sonic the Hedgehog 3 just like written in solid gold and like embossed with diamonds or something? Because like, what is happening? Jim Carrey's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna retire, but unless like someone hands me like a really great script, I'm basically done. He comes back for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Keanu Reeves, a man who's turned down no fewer than like 5 or 6 multi-million-dollar Marvel film contracts, signs up to be Shadow the freaking Hedgehog? What is this? What is happening? It's absolute insanity, and I love it. And the Knuckles series,
Sonic Adventure 2, man.
Yeah.
It is the autism, the collective autism of all of the internet is powering Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Yeah, that checks out actually. That checks out. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if they're actually gonna give Shadow his own spin-off because they want to do that.
No, they do, but it also kind of hinges on how they do this film. This film is gonna like if they adapt Sonic Adventure 2 and they adapt like Shadow the Hedgehog, which seems to be what the trailer is implying. There's any number of ways this movie could actually end, and it may not end in the heroic sacrifice of Adventure 2.
Well, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's probably for the best they do that because, I mean, Shadow the Hedgehog really seems to imply that it really seems to assume that you've played Sonic Adventure.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. I mean, he was the hotness at that point. But, I mean, and it also, basically the entire thing of the game was recontextualizing what he was doing and what was going on with that.
Yep.
So, I mean, did I agree with pretty much everything in Shadow? Oh no. Oh no. 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 Shadow the Hedgehog being the ultimate life form going to be, went from that to, oh yeah, you're basically half alien, like the Guyver now. Yeah, no. No. No, I
Yeah.
don't.
Again, you could really feel that early aughts culture permeating that game, and they wanted to make it darker and edgier, and aliens and Sonic are that thing, apparently.
I mean, there are aliens in Sonic, but they're usually just whimsical, other wacky, whimsical creatures. They're not like big, spoopy, like gotta shoot them with a BFG monsters.
No, all true. All true. And
They're the wisps, not
yeah.
Oh, I'm the Mancubus from Doom.
It's going to
I,
hinge
I
a lot on how they do it. Now here's my theory on how they want to do this. If they want to make Sonic the Hedgehog 4 and they want to turn this into a long-running series, it's better that the ending is more in line with Shadow the Hedgehog, where they use the Ark to destroy Black Doom. If this is the last film, if they're in danger of losing, uh, I forget the names of the lead actors, Tika Sumpter and the human counterparts to the characters, if they're in danger of losing them, then doing Sonic Adventure 2's ending will make more sense. That
oh,
would
you mean
be
Mom
a,
Sitter and Dad Sitter?
yeah, Dad Be Sitter and Mom Be Sitter, yes. If they're in danger
I
of
gotta
losing
say,
their human cast, then doing Sonic Adventure 2's ending would be a really good send off to these three films. If they're
I
going to
gotta say
try to go
too.
past, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I gotta say too. It's wild to me that like in the year of our Lord 2024, that I can be more invested in what's going on with the human counterpart characters in Sonic the Hedgehog than in any of the human characters in any of the modern Hollywood Godzilla films.
That's
That is
true.
wild to me.
See, I wasn't even
Because
sure where you were going with that statement. So I was like, he could talk about the Marvel films. He could talk about Godzilla films. He could also talk about Hollywood in general. So I was like, I'm just really curious where the sentence is going to end, and I was not disappointed.
I'm just gonna let Ditaku just ramble. This is gonna end with him either talking about life, the universe, and everything, or it's just gonna be him complaining about peanut butter for an entire hour.
Either way, I'm getting a
Either
show.
way, yes.
So, like, yeah, uh, that is the very, very, very heavily abridged history and current status of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Even though it's heavily abridged, we've been talking for like almost 3 hours now.
Yeah. I, I skimped out on the details. I didn't go into minutia like Froggy somehow having Chaos's tail, or the Zeti being this weird race of Oni demons locked away on some alien faraway planet. Honestly, they're not interesting and they all die anyway. So, well, not Froggy. Froggy's still alive. Froggy is still around. But the
I was
Zeti
about to say he literally is in the Sonic Rumble trailer. He's
died.
yeah. So
So, for
that
all the
is a weirdly
missteps.
long-lived frog.
Yeah, no, it really is, right? Because that game came out in 1998 in Japan. But it's like, for all the missteps, for all the mistakes, for all the boneheaded decisions that Sonic's had foisted upon him, he's still alive and kicking, and in some regards, never been better. Like, who would have expected that the Sonic the Hedgehog movie would be probably one of the more anticipated films of 2024?
And you got to say this, out of the absolute moral and ethical wasteland that is Twitter, Sonic the Hedgehog's official Twitter is probably one of the best things to come out of it,
That's
if
true.
only for the fact that whoever is running that has real good bants. They
Do.
take the absolute degeneracy of Twitter and they throw it right back at people, and they do it in a really funny way.
They do. They do it with class and style, and they do seem to have a robust understanding of the lore. In fact, I remember reading somewhere that after Frontiers, they literally had made a small part of Sonic Team dedicated to being the lore keepers of Sonic the Hedgehog. Because Frontiers also added and changed a few things. Like, turns out the Master Emerald is from Earth, but the Chaos Emeralds came from outer space, and we don't know where.
And I mean, I'll say this: as entertaining as the other, like the keepers of the bants on Twitter are, most of them descend into Urmom lol, like Wendy's does,
Yeah.
but Sonic hasn't descended into that, at least that I've seen.
I
So
think part of it is there is a certain level of self awareness when you're a Sonic fan. You know that it's silly. You know that you're talking about a blue cartoon anime hedgehog with a very silly premise. But I don't know, I guess maybe it finds a kind of exaltation in that humility. Where it's
a
like,
cartoon anime hedgehog who's wearing Michael Jackson's shoes, who's doing a finger wag, who I want to say comes from a Japanese comedian from that time, who, yeah, basically is just deeply embarrassed at how the internet keeps treating him.
and Sonic,
Uh,
I think Sonic Team even knows that Sonic is just kind of a meme. But and at the same time, they're just like, yeah, we just want to tell this weirdly grandiose story that involves the feds icing a 10-year-old girl and vengeance and this weird water demon that wanted to subsume the world. It's
you
like,
know, I that is my one thing that I honestly am kind of disappointed in is that like at Sonic Adventure 1 is always ignored because it's not the one with Shadow Mao. And just like, yeah, but I'm sorry. I mean, you literally have a thing where you save a city and defeat, an ancient water Satan by, with 90s new metal with, I'm sorry. It just, that just, I really, really like that. And I think that Open Your Heart is a better theme, main title theme than Live and Learn. That's going to be my ultimate, hot take. Booyah.
no,
Take it.
I agree with
Don't
you.
at me.
I agree with you on that, actually. Live and Learn is good. I will say the Sonic Adventure 2 album is good. I would say Sonic Adventure 1's vocal tracks typically are a little bit better, possible exception of Escape from the City.
I mean, I'll say this. There's a reason why everyone remembers Unknown from Me, and except all of them, except for maybe Amy. Excuse me, Amy Rose's.
Yeah, her theme isn't one of the more memorable ones. It's kind of a very generic jazz pop ballad.
Maybe we should ask a ranger to do covers. One of those.
Arranger, we have a task for you.
We need you to rap again.
You did it for the
We
Snek
need you to
Rap.
do Knuckles, Knuckles, and Knuckles.
We have full faith and confidence in your ability to do this. But yeah, I think that is one of the strengths of Sonic as a franchise is it can have the silly, goofy, haha memes and the Sonic Boom cartoon, which was just a straight comedy, honestly, and it would also have those deeper, heartfelt moments. Like there are several very somber moments in Sonic Frontiers where Sonic is seeing the ghosts of this ancient civilization and how they would have lived their lives, or again Maria being iced by a fed because he tried to shoot her dog but her dog was already in the escape capsule.
Maria, I'm sorry, Shadow, but you farted. Oh, whoever smelt it dealt it. Remember, Shadow, furries aren't people.
And, Sonic is King Arthur. And also
Who
a
hates
fake character.
furries? You laugh, but that is literally one of the skills that King Arthur male has in Fate. Beast Hunter. So
Well, now we need to get him
it's canon.
we need to get him the Sonic costume that Roger Craig Smith wore in that one scene in Sonic Boom, and put that on King Arthur prototype. That's an interesting rabbit hole. So
YouTube poop fans, that's what you need to do. You need to use AI in order to have Roger Craig Smith voice King Arthur from Fate, rather than just, hey, I'm gonna make, AI versions of Joe Biden versus Obama as Dragon Ball characters.
yes, this is what AI was made for. AI was made for Roger Craig Smith overdubbing King Arthur as Sonic the Hedgehog.
Who's Roger? Talking about me.
And I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into this topic. And if you guys want to see us talk or play more Sonic in the future, leave a comment and tell us like which ones would you want to see us do. Don't say the Game Gear games because I'll ignore you.
Clearly, they want to see us play Sonic the Fighters.
Well, anyway, we'll bring this episode to a close then, as I think we're reaching dangerous levels of Sonic now.
Gotta go fast.
I'll try to fight it in court, but I don't think "gotta go fast" can be used as a medical condition. So thank you everyone for hanging with us for 2.5 hours as we go into a disgustingly simplified version of the history and current events of Sonic the Hedgehog. What other deep dive should we do? What other thing shall we delve into? You guys tell us, and we will laugh at them. I mean, consider them.
Because, believe it or not, Snek and I know a lot of things, and we like talking about things. And if there are things that we don't know, we will learn about them because that's what we do.
Correct. And we love learning about new stuff. We love talking about stuff that we love. And you guys seem to enjoy it when we do that. So you let us know what it is you have in mind. And we will see you guys in the next one.
There's the fourth damn Chaos Emerald. It was right there.